There are moments in life when the truth doesn't tap you on the shoulder. It grabs you by the soul, and nothing hits harder than realizing the person you once overlooked was the one holding your world together long after they've already walked away. There's a certain kind of quiet that people take for granted, a kind of silence that isn't loud or dramatic, doesn't demand attention, doesn't push or pull. It just exists, steady and patient. And too often that kind of silence is misunderstood. He saw her quietness and thought it meant she didn't care enough to speak. He saw her stillness and assumed she had no fire. He believed that because she didn't raise her voice, she lacked strength. But he never realized that her silence was the strongest thing in the room. There's a moment in life when you recognize just how powerful a calm soul can be. She didn't rush into arguments, didn't throw her emotions like weapons, didn't try to win battles with noise. Instead, she observed, she listened, she understood more than she ever let on. And that kind of strength, the kind that is grounded, the kind that's unshakable, can be intimidating in a world where everyone is racing to be louder than the next person. He mistook her stillness for softness. He mistook her patience for passivity. He mistook her kindness for weakness. But what he never understood was that people who carry storms within them don't always feel the need to release them. Sometimes they sit with their pain, breathe through it, and rise above it without making a sound. And it's in that rise, silent, steady, and strong, that their real power is revealed. Many people don't see the weight of the things she held inside because she didn't make others carry it for her. She learned early that life won't always give you a place to fall apart, so she became her own shelter. She learned that arguments don't always solve problems, so she chose understanding instead of chaos. She learned that reacting isn't always the answer, so she chose reflection instead of destruction. And when a person chooses peace over provocation, the world often assumes they're fragile. But peace is one of the hardest things to choose. It takes restraint. It takes emotional intelligence. It takes maturity. Silence isn't the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. Psychologists say that people who stay calm during conflict often have a deeper inner world than anyone realizes. They process everything, your tone, the meaning behind your words, the things you didn't say. They see the truth in the small details others overlook. She did all of that. And while he thought she wasn't reacting, she was absorbing. While he thought she was indifferent, she was evaluating. While he assumed she'd always stay, she was slowly learning who deserved her softness and who didn't. There's a universal human experience here. How often do we overlook the quiet ones? Think about classrooms. The quiet kid in the corner often becomes the most successful one later in life. In workplaces, the soft-spoken employee is usually the one with the sharpest mind, the calmest judgment. In relationships, the person who doesn't scream or slam doors is usually the one carrying the heart of the connection. She was that person. She wasn't loud, but she was loyal. She wasn't demanding, but she was devoted. She didn't fight for attention, but she gave everything she had. And because she wasn't constantly proving herself, he assumed she had nothing to prove. It's ironic, isn't it? The people who give the most are often the ones who get judged the harshest. The ones who love quietly are often the ones who get taken for granted. There are women like her everywhere, holding families together without recognition, supporting partners who don't notice their sacrifices, standing strong in situations that would break most people. But they don't wear their pain on their sleeves. They don't announce their struggles. They don't ask for applause. They simply keep moving, keep giving, keep loving. And that kind of quiet resilience is easy to overlook until you no longer have it around you. He didn't see how strong she was because she made strength look effortless. She didn't slam doors. She simply chose to walk through them when needed. She didn't shout to be understood. She spoke with actions instead of volume. She didn't threaten to leave. She just left when she realized she was fighting alone. Her silence wasn't a sign that she had nothing to say. It was a sign that she no longer felt safe saying it. That's the part he never understood. People forget that silence is a language. It speaks when words fail. It communicates when emotions can't be contained. It reveals truths that conversations often hide. Her silence was telling him everything he refused to hear, that she was hurting, that she was tired, that she was giving too much. But he called it overthinking instead of listening. He called it mood swings instead of caring. He called it distance instead of looking at what pushed her away. If you've ever been the quiet one in a relationship, you know how it feels to watch someone underestimate what they cannot see. You know the weight of swallowing your pain because you want to protect the other person. You know the strength it takes not to match someone's chaos with chaos of your own. And you know the moment you finally choose yourself, that moment of clarity where your silence becomes your shield instead of your burden. He never realized she was strong enough to walk away without a fight, strong enough to rebuild herself quietly, strong enough to choose peace over someone who didn't value her presence. That's the irony. The strength he overlooked became the strength that freed her. And by the time life showed him what her silence really meant, she was already gone. A quiet woman isn't weak. She's simply selective about where she invests her energy. And once she realizes her silence is being mistaken for submission, she'll show you the difference between being calm and being controlled. She'll show you that the softest people often carry the strongest hearts. And she'll show you, in the gentlest way possible, that underestimating someone like her is one of life's most painful lessons. Because silence may not shout, but its echo can change everything. There's something deeply human about assuming the things that feel constant will remain forever. We're wired to believe that what we see every day, what supports us without hesitation, what shows up even in our worst moments, will somehow always be there. And that's where he failed to understand her. He didn't see that her consistency wasn't a default setting. It was a choice she made every day, a choice to stay, a choice to care, a choice to show up even when she was tired, even when she felt unseen, even when she questioned if he still valued what she brought into his life. He took her consistency the way people take sunrise for granted. They don't wake up wondering if it'll appear. They just expect it. And that expectation becomes entitlement when appreciation disappears. From the way she remembered the little things, to how she asked about his day, even when her own had been heavy, to how she held space for him when he didn't even know how to hold space for himself. He thought that was simply her nature. He didn't realize it was effort. Real daily, emotional effort. Most people don't understand how much strength consistency requires. It's easier to be good once, to show love in grand gestures, to be supportive when the mood hits. But she didn't operate in moments. She operated in patterns. She made sure he never felt alone. She made sure he felt understood. She made sure he felt valued, even when she didn't always receive the same in return. But because she was so dependable, he assumed she didn't need anything from him. Because she was always there, he thought she'd always remain, even without being nurtured, even without being heard, even without being appreciated. There's a moment that happens in many relationships. though no one talks about it. It's the moment when the giver realizes they are giving alone. When the person who always shows up notices no one has shown up for them. When the emotional caretaker realizes the care they offer doesn't circle back. She felt that moment slowly, not with fireworks, not with a breakdown, but with a quiet exhaustion, a fatigue that grows inside when someone pours into another person without being refilled. He didn't see how her consistency was slowly turning into depletion. He mistook her reliability for infinite capacity. He assumed because she stayed once, she would stay 100 times. But the truth is, even the strongest heart can run out of reasons to keep breaking for someone who never stops to wonder how much it hurts. Even the most devoted person needs a hand to hold sometimes. Even the calmest soul needs reassurance. There's a saying that the things we take for granted become the things we miss the most. And that couldn't be more accurate. When she stopped checking in, he felt the silence. When she stopped reminding him of the things he forgot, he felt disoriented. When she stopped calming his storms, he realized how chaotic his world actually was. Her absence made him confront how much she had been holding together. Not just for him, but for both of them. A study once showed that relationships thrive not because of grand gestures, but because of consistent small acts of kindness. The daily, "How are you?" The little reminders, the emotional presence, the willingness to listen. These things create emotional safety, trust, connection. She offered all of that effortlessly, so effortlessly that he convinced himself her giving was endless. He never paused to ask how she was doing. He never matched her consistency with his own. He let her carry the emotional weight of the relationship, believing her strength was unshakable. But something happens inside a person when they feel unseen. They start pulling back, slowly, subtly. Not to hurt the other person, but to survive. She began withdrawing her energy, not because she stopped caring, but because she needed to protect what was left of herself. The texts became shorter. The calls became less frequent. The conversations lost the spark they once had because she no longer had the emotional strength to keep them alive on her own. And he noticed only when the distance had already deepened. People often wake up too late. They see the value of consistency only in its absence. They realize loyalty is rare only when the person who gave it leaves. They understand emotional effort only when their own heart grows heavy without it. He found himself in that space, the space where reality hits hard and regret becomes a quiet companion. He started recalling the tiny moments, the way she always remembered his favorite coffee, even when he forgot hers. The way she sent messages when he didn't reply, just to check if he was okay. The way she stood by him during his failures without reminding him of them. These moments, once ignored, became memories he couldn't escape. And that's the truth about consistency. It builds a foundation so stable that you don't realize how much it supports you until it's gone. He finally understood that her effort wasn't ordinary. It was love in its purest form. It was commitment without conditions. It was presence without applause. And once he felt the coldness of a world without her warmth, he understood how much he had overlooked. There's irony in how life teaches us lessons. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who break in silence. Sometimes the most loyal hearts are the ones that leave without warning. And sometimes the ones we think will stay forever are the ones we lose because we didn't learn how to stay for them. Her consistency was never guaranteed. It was a gift, a rare one, a precious one, and gifts like that don't come twice. He learned that too late, in the quiet moments when he finally acknowledged the truth. She wasn't asking for everything. She was only asking for something. And even that he did not give. So when she walked away, calmly, gracefully, without revenge or anger. He realized he had lost not just a person, but a presence that once filled his world with steadiness, comfort, and love, a presence he took for granted, thinking it would always remain. But consistency without appreciation cannot survive. And the moment she stopped offering it, he understood what it meant to lose the one thing he never valued enough, the one heart that was willing to stay even when it hurt. And now, he would spend years wondering how he didn't see it sooner. There comes a moment in life when the truth doesn't whisper, it hits. Hard. Suddenly, painfully, unmistakably. For him, that moment arrived the day she finally walked away. Not because she wanted to punish him, not because she wanted to prove a point, but because she had exhausted every part of herself trying to be understood by someone who wasn't ready to see her. It's strange how human nature works. You can stand beside someone for years, giving them your warmth, your loyalty, your effort, and they will still take it for granted until the day that warmth is no longer there to comfort them. He didn't feel her absence immediately. Most people don't. The first few days feel like freedom, space, silence, breathing room. But as time moves forward, the world grows quieter, and the heart begins to notice the missing pieces. The conversations that once filled the day suddenly disappear. The laughter that made even the hardest days feel bearable becomes only a memory. The support that wrapped around him like a shield is gone. And that's when reality sinks in, slowly, deeply, painfully. He started to realize the weight of the things she used to carry for him. The emotional labor she performed without complaint. The way she checked in, even when he didn't reply right away. The way she made sure he never felt alone, even when she did. She used to be the one person who saw him, truly saw him, and he never understood how rare that gift was. Life has a way of revealing truth not through comfort, but through absence. It's not until you lose something meaningful that you begin to understand how valuable it really was. That's what happened to him. The emptiness she left behind wasn't just emotional, it was structural. She had been the foundation he didn't notice, the anchor he didn't appreciate, the light he assumed would never dim. He'd wake up and reach for his phone, expecting a message that wasn't coming anymore. He'd play an old song, and suddenly her voice would echo in his mind, humming along like she used to. He'd pass by places that once felt ordinary, and now they tugged at him with a loneliness he didn't know how to process. He wasn't grieving a breakup. He was grieving the loss of someone who had given him a world he didn't realize he was living in. It's human nature to underestimate consistency and overvalue momentary excitement. But she wasn't a moment, she was a presence. A presence that made chaos feel manageable, made sadness feel temporary, made life feel possible. And now that she was gone, he had to confront the truth he had been avoiding. Nothing felt the same without her. There were things he started noticing, small, almost invisible things that became painfully obvious in her absence. No one else remembered how he liked his coffee. No one asked about the dreams he kept buried. No one noticed when his voice cracked in the middle of a sentence. No one stayed long enough to understand the depths of his fears. She had understood all of it, and he had dismissed it as something normal, something anyone would do. But not everyone does that. Not everyone cares with that level of devotion. Not everyone loves with that kind of sincerity. And the moment she stepped away, life forced him to see just how extraordinary she truly was. It wasn't anger or bitterness that taught him. Life itself became the teacher. The loneliness, the quiet, the moments when he needed someone and realized she wasn't there, the times he reached for comfort only to find emptiness. Life doesn't give lessons wrapped in softness. It delivers them in the very cracks we create by not valuing what we had. He saw her strength differently now. When she walked away, she didn't crumble. She didn't beg. She didn't create drama. She chose herself. And for the first time, he understood the courage that took. She had spent so long holding him together that he forgot she was holding herself together too. He never realized how many times she stayed even when staying broke her. He never saw the quiet tears, the hesitation before sending another message, the nights she kept giving him reassurance while she received none in return. But life has a way of shifting perspective. When she was no longer by his side, he felt the weight of all the ways she loved him. He felt the absence of every small gesture he once dismissed, the way she remembered dates, the way she calmed his fears, the way she believed in him more than he believed in himself. These things weren't small, they were everything, and he had overlooked them. That's the thing about losing someone who genuinely cares. They don't leave a void, they leave a universe. A universe of memories, support, love, and moments that you can't recreate with anyone else. He tried. He met new people, had new conversations, searched for the same warmth, the same emotional depth, the same understanding, but every connection felt shallow compared to the richness she offered without condition. He finally understood the truth life had been trying to show him. She wasn't average. She wasn't replaceable. She wasn't temporary. She was the one he was never meant to lose. Sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that break you open. And she became that lesson for him, a living reminder that you cannot take someone for granted and expect them to stay. You cannot ignore someone's value and then claim surprise when life shows you what you've lost. He learned that love isn't measured by how loud it is, but by how deeply it changes you. And she had changed him even in her absence. He now carried the truth everywhere he went. She wasn't the one who got away. She was the one he pushed away by not recognizing her worth when she was right in front of him. And life, with all its honesty and unforgiving lessons, finally revealed the magnitude of what she had been all along, a blessing he didn't know how to cherish. And sometimes that realization comes too late. There comes a moment when the heart finally sees what the eyes refused to acknowledge for far too long. A moment when the truth rises slowly, like dawn pushing through the darkness, and you realize that the person you once labeled as too much was the only one holding everything together. That she wasn't the weight dragging you down, she was the anchor keeping you steady. And he had spent so long thinking she was the burden, never understanding she was the reason he didn't break. He didn't notice it at first. People rarely do. When someone is strong, patient, dependable, and full of quiet courage, you start to think it's effortless for them. You start believing they can carry anything because they've carried you without complaint. He thought her questions were nagging. Her reminders were unnecessary. Her concerns were exaggerated. He misunderstood her care as control and her presence as pressure. But what he didn't see, what he wasn't ready to understand back then, was that she was trying to protect him from falling into the very chaos she was absorbing for him. Life is strange like that. It hides the truth behind comfort and reveals it through loss. When she left, the things he labeled overthinking became the very things he missed. The things he brushed off as too emotional became the moments he longed for. The things he once believed were burdens became the things he realized he depended on more than he ever admitted. And slowly, painfully, he began to see her not as the person who weighed him down, but as the one who kept him grounded. There's a kind of strength people don't talk about enough, the emotional strength that doesn't come from being tough on the outside, but from being soft on the inside while carrying more than anyone knows. She had that strength. She was the one who reminded him to breathe when life felt heavy, the one who encouraged him when he doubted himself, the one who stayed even when he pushed her away emotionally. She tried to help him grow, not because she judged him, but because she believed he could become better. And he didn't realize how deeply he leaned on her until she stopped being there to catch him. The decisions that once felt simple suddenly felt heavy. The responsibilities he once shrugged off now sat on his shoulders with a weight he couldn't ignore. The emotional storms he once escaped through her presence became battles he had to fight alone. She wasn't the burden. She had been shielding him from burdens he didn't even know existed. And without her, everything felt louder, messier, harder. He started remembering small things, subtle, quiet acts he never thanked her for. The way she reminded him of deadlines before they became disasters. The way she checked in when she sensed something was off before he even said a word. The way she managed situations he didn't want to deal with. She wasn't trying to control him. She was trying to lighten his load. And he had mistaken all that love, all that emotional labor, all that silent support as pressure. This happens to so many people. We mistake support for suffocation when we aren't ready to face our own responsibilities. We call someone too much when we're giving too little. We call their questions annoying when they're actually concern. We avoid accountability by blaming the person who cares the most. And we realize the truth only when they step back long enough for us to face ourselves. He finally saw the pattern. How she always stood strong even when she wasn't okay. How she always put his feelings first. How she carried the emotional connection while he took it for granted. He realized she wasn't trying to weigh him down. She was trying to keep him balanced, supported, protected. She wasn't the storm. She was the lighthouse. A story comes to mind, a simple one. A man once said he felt chained by the woman who kept reminding him to take care of himself. Years later, after losing her, he realized those chains were actually the ropes keeping him from drifting into self-destruction. Her care wasn't confinement, it was love in its purest form. The same truth unfolded for him. Her presence wasn't a cage. It was the only thing that helped him stay aligned with the version of himself he was too scared to grow into. It's astonishing how life makes us face our own reflection. Without her, he saw the parts of himself she used to patch, the cracks she covered with gentleness, the insecurities she calmed with reassurance. He understood that she wasn't the one making things complicated. She was the one simplifying everything he didn't have the emotional maturity to handle. And it wasn't just about what she did for him. It was about who she was. She carried herself with grace, even when she was hurting. She supported him even when she was exhausted. She believed in the relationship even when it was tearing her apart. She was the person who loved deeply, wholeheartedly, and without keeping score, a rare kind of spirit, the kind that doesn't come twice in a lifetime. He finally understood the difference between being cared for and being controlled. The difference between someone holding you back and someone holding you together. The difference between love that feels heavy and love that keeps you from falling apart. She had been his anchor, not to restrain him, but to steady him. And the pain of that realization didn't come all at once. It came in waves. In quiet nights when he wished someone would ask him how he was. In stressful days when he wished someone would remind him it would be okay. In moments of fear when he wished there was someone who could sense his trembling voice without him explaining it. Every wave echoed the same truth. She wasn't the burden. He was. She carried the love. She carried the effort. She carried the emotional connection. And he didn't recognize her worth until he had no choice but to confront the emptiness she once filled with her presence. Life showed him the truth with honesty and clarity. She wasn't holding him back. She was holding him together. And now all he could do was live with the lesson that arrived too late. And sometimes that lesson becomes a quiet ache that never fully leaves. There comes a moment in every person's life when the truth stops whispering and begins to roar. For him, that moment arrived long after she had stopped trying to prove anything, long after she had stopped explaining her heart, her intentions, her kindness. He used to think she was the one who needed to grow, the one who needed to evolve, the one who needed to become better. But life has a way of flipping the mirror, turning it around, and forcing a person to see what was always there. And suddenly, he realized something he should have known from the very beginning. She never changed, not her heart, not her nature, not her spirit. What changed was the lens through which he finally learned to see her. At first, he moved through life with this quiet arrogance, the kind that convinces a person they have endless time, endless chances, endless grace. He thought she would always be there, soft, patient, steady. He thought she would always be the one to bend, to adjust, to wait for him to figure himself out. And in that mindset, he wasn't really looking at her. He was looking past her, assuming her warmth was just part of the background of his life. He assumed her loyalty was automatic. He assumed her kindness was unshakable. He assumed her love was his to revisit whenever it suited him. But assumptions are fragile things. They fall apart the moment life stops going your way. When she walked away, she didn't do it loudly or dramatically. She didn't slam doors. She didn't shout her worth into the sky. She didn't demand he recognize what he had lost. She simply began choosing herself in the places where she had once chosen him. That quiet shift, it shook his world in ways he never expected. It wasn't that she became someone new. It was that, for the first time, he was forced to see who she had been all along. And suddenly, every moment he overlooked started replaying in his memory with painful clarity. He remembered her gentle reminders, the ones he took as nagging. He remembered her advice, the words he brushed off as overthinking. He remembered her presence, the calm he once dismissed as boring or predictable. But with distance, those small things weren't small anymore. They were revelations. They were glimpses of a love that had been deeper, fuller, more generous than he deserved at the time. He once thought she needed to be less emotional, but now he saw that she was honest. He once thought she was too forgiving, but now he saw she was compassionate. He once thought she was too consistent, but now he understood she was dependable in a world where people change directions on a whim. The truth is, she was never the one who needed fixing. She was never the one who needed to grow up. She was never the one who needed to change who she was. She just needed someone who could appreciate her with the maturity she always showed him. She needed someone who could meet her where she stood, not someone who kept asking her to shrink, to quiet her heart, to dim her fire so he could feel comfortable. And once she stopped standing in that shrinking space, once she stepped fully into herself, it became clear that nothing was wrong with her. His perspective had simply been too small to understand a woman like her. Life has a strange way of teaching lessons. Sometimes it teaches gently. Sometimes it teaches brutally. For him, the lesson arrived in the harshest way possible, through absence. It was in the silence she left behind that he finally heard the truth. The sound of her absence echoed louder than her presence ever did, not because she was loud, but because her value was. And for the first time, he realized that he hadn't lost someone ordinary. He had lost someone rare, someone irreplaceable, someone who didn't demand perfection, but offered effort, someone who didn't keep score, but cared deeply, someone who loved without conditions, but expected honesty, respect, and partnership, someone who saw him even when he couldn't see himself. He looked back at the moments he took for granted, and for the first time, he understood the weight of her patience. He understood the strength it took for her to love with that much sincerity. He understood that her softness wasn't weakness, it was courage. It was a willingness to keep showing up even when he made it difficult. And as the truth settled in, he realized he had mistaken her consistency for permanence. He thought she would endure anything. He never imagined she would outgrow the version of him that refused to grow with her. But she did. And when she walked away, she didn't become bitter or cold. She didn't abandon her principles or harden her heart. She simply reclaimed the parts of herself she had set aside. She reclaimed her dreams, her peace, her strength. And in doing so, she revealed something he never took seriously. Her worth wasn't dependent on staying. Her worth existed with or without him. She wasn't defined by the relationship. The relationship was defined by how well he treated her. And he treated her too casually, too carelessly, too confidently, as if she would always return. Now he understands that love isn't something you own. It's something you honor. It's something you protect. It's something you choose every day. The right person doesn't need you to be perfect, but they need you to recognize the beauty of what you have while you still have it. He thought she changed because she no longer accepted the bare minimum. But the truth is, she didn't change at all. She simply stopped letting his limited perspective define her value. And if life ever gives him another chance, whether with her or someone new, he'll carry this lesson forever. When someone gives you their heart, don't look at it with the eyes of someone who thinks they have infinite time. Look at it with the eyes of someone who understands that real love is rare, and losing it is a pain that lingers long after the moment passes. She didn't change. His perspective did. And sometimes that shift is the difference between losing someone forever and finally understanding what it means to truly cherish them. The woman he underestimated wasn't weak. She wasn't replaceable. She wasn't forgettable. She was the lesson. She was the turning point. She was the reminder that not every person is meant to stay, but some are meant to change us forever. He learned it late, but he learned it well. Never underestimate a woman whose strength is quiet, whose love is real, and whose absence teaches what her presence never needed to say.